Coming up on Mountain News this morning, we have some tips on how you can stay warm at home as cold temperatures continue to move in, and they're already here. And a local farmer urges any plant parents watching this morning to take care of their plants so they can last through the fall season.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News this morning.
6 o'clock here on this Tuesday morning. I'm Dakota Makris. Good morning to you. And like I just read, those cold temperatures, they're not moving in, they're already here. Let's take it over to Cameron Aaron for a check of our weather this morning. And Cameron, looks like some snow flurries behind you this morning.
Yeah, a few people waking up to some snow flurries this morning here in Hazard. Not one of those places, but mostly along and north of the Mountain Parkway this morning. Had a few snow showers earlier today. We did get this video from Bath County, just outside the viewing area. You can see snow is coming down at a good clip at this location earlier this morning, even enough to coat the back deck at this location, so you can see some pretty nice snow coming down. But right now, up on satellite and radar in our locations, most of us are dry except for Rockcastle County. A few flurries possible near Mount Vernon along I-75. You could see a few snow flurries this morning. Not going to be a big deal. Most of us are above freezing. 35 in Irvin, also in Jackson, 34 for Pikeville, 36 in Hazard, and 33 for London and Manchester. Clintonwood, the cool spot at 29 degrees this morning. All of us included in a freeze warning until 10 o'clock this morning, so be sure to grab the jacket and keep on to it because you will need it. A breezy west wind up to 20 miles per hour at times. It will feel even cooler than it actually is. A few showers are possible this morning, and we could see a few more showers into the early afternoon. I have your full forecast coming up in just a little bit. Dakota?
Cameron, thank you. Well, the Kentucky Blood Center is in need of donors, but this time it says the situation is urgent. Officials tell us blood transfusions are up 18% in recent months and are currently on a one-day supply. Garrett Weimer and photojournalist Darnielle Crenshaw talked with a frequent blood donor who wonders if our state experiences another catastrophe. Is our blood supply in adequate shape to help?
Trauma season. It's usually those summer months where medical professionals see an uptick in life-saving medical care. But trauma season seems to be carrying over into the fall months as blood transfusions in hospitals are on the uptick.
In August, we were averaging about 216 transfusions a day. That's up to 260 at a time when we kind of hope to be coming down a little bit.
Eric Lindsay is with the Kentucky Blood Center. He says the 18% increase in blood transfusions puts a strain on blood supply. They'd like to have a 3 to 4 day supply. But right now it's down to a 1 day, in some cases half a day supply.
When we're only getting about 275 donors in the door per day and we're using up, if something happens overnight and we need 100 units of blood for one patient, that really puts us in a tough position.
Just look at some of these empty shelves at the Kentucky Blood Center. The third section is full because it was blood that was imported. There's a concern that if a catastrophe happened in central Kentucky, would the current blood supply help?
We need people in the seats today so that, God forbid, something happens Tuesday or Wednesday this week, that blood is there so we can help serve people.
Dan Phillips is a frequent visitor here for the past 20 years now, donating a total of 50 gallons of blood. He too is concerned about our supply if there's a major disaster.
When there's a catastrophe, there's no time to get donations, and people need it right now.
Phillips is a former paramedic. He knows firsthand how critical blood donations are to hospitals.
This is easy to do, and you literally save a life. That's not an exaggeration.
In Lexington, Garrett Weimer, WKYT.
Officials say more donors are needed because the need for blood will ramp up during the holiday season. Eastern Kentucky continues to deal with its own catastrophe, and organizations continue to help. After serving flood victims in Hindman last month, one Alabama-based organization is back in Eastern Kentucky, feeding the people in Letcher County. 7C Ministries is a group of Christian cowboys who use traditional chuck wagon cooking to feed people who have been impacted by disaster. Those with the organization not only feed the body, but they aim to feed the soul as well.
It's eye-opening to see the damage, but it's also eye-opening to see the strength of the communities. I believe this is bringing some of the communities back together to help each other out.
7C Ministries will be set up outside the ISOM IGA until Wednesday. The organization runs solely on donations. We're learning new details about the Team Eastern Kentucky Relief Fund and how it is being used to help flood victims here in our region. The state raised more than $10 million. It has used nearly $4 million of it so far. $400,000 paid for funerals. Nearly $3.5 million were given out in checks. The state still has $6 million to spend, but it's unclear what that money will go towards. And as flood survivors move into travel trailers, some are struggling with new circumstances. Michelle Reed, who is living in a camper at Perry County Park, says their heater is broken and they are using a makeshift ramp to get her cousin around as she has to use a wheelchair, and the trailers are not made with a ramp. Even with the issues, Reed says they are struggling to get help.
People continue to tell us that, well, there are people still in tents, or there are people a lot worse off than you. And that negates the fact that this entire population up here is still suffering.
Reed says her mother is also moving in with her, and they are worried they may not have enough space for everyone. As the temperatures get cooler here in our region, there is an urgent call for help. Breathitt County leaders are desperate for heaters to keep flood victims warm. Right now, the need is greater than their supply. Grayson Passmore has that story.
11 weeks after the flood, an eerie quietness settles with the sun high above Breathitt County before the potentially record-breaking low temperatures come in with the night.
I just hate the thought that somebody's in a home that ain't got any kind of heat, and you know, it's just tough to handle.
Judge Executive Jeff Noble pleads for more heaters. So far, they've had 120 people contact his office in need of one. They've been able to give out around 60.
You know, it's sad to think that somebody's ain't got any heat and freezing. And one thing that I really didn't think much about was people, after they got their houses muddied out, they moved back in them, you know, and try to box one room in with the tarp or whatever. And didn't think about those people not having any heat, but their heat pumps got destroyed during the flood.
Noble is opening a warming shelter for the next 3 nights, but with the potential to even see some snow flurries. The worry is those without heaters could freeze to death.
I mean, no linen for their beds. Some of them don't even have beds. Some of them don't even have pillows, blankets, cookware. I mean, our needs are really as needy as ever.
There are 15 travel trailers coming in soon, just not soon enough to beat this cold.
If they do not have no means to stay warm, if they'll contact us, we'll make sure we get to them and try to get them some help.
That was Grayson Passmore reporting, and that warming shelter is at the Jackson Fire Department and is open from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. You are asked to call ahead before you show up by using the number you see at the bottom of your screen. Pets are not allowed. Well, with the colder weather heading earlier this year, it is time to prepare your home so you can stay warm and comfortable. Local plumber Patrick Gooden says there are important things to do around your house to make sure it is ready for winter. He says every year he sees people with thousands of dollars of damage around their home because they didn't winterize.
Make sure that your crawl space doors are shut and got some weather stripping around them. Make sure that your vents going under your house is closed for the winter.
Well, he also says it is important to unhook your hoses on the outside of your house to make sure you do not have any pipes bust as freezing weather heads our direction. And speaking of those cooler temps, plants are also important to take care of if you want them to last. Local farmer Lonnie Maggard says mums are usually the most popular plant during the fall months, and I love a mum. And he says if you take care of them properly, they could last through Thanksgiving.
If it drops down into the 20s, my advice is set them on the inside of the building or into your little garage or something else. And as the temperature warms back up, set them back outside and they'll live right on.
Well, he says other plants are not as important to cover in the fall because they typically will not live through the winter.
Well, speaking of those cooler temperatures, it is very cold as you step out the door this morning. Here's a live look over at the London Corbin Airport, looking at a cloudy sky this morning. Current temperature just above freezing at 33 degrees, but check out the feels like temperature. That is the big story. We feel like we're in the upper 20s once you factor in that wind out of the west. Up on satellite and radar, cloudy this morning, and also a few snow flurries, especially over Rockcastle County near I-75 and Mount Vernon. If you're traveling on I-75 this morning, you may run into a few snowflakes. Upper 20s in Clintwood, lower 30s for Jonesville and Wise, middle 30s in Jackson and Urban. All of us included in a freeze warning until 10 o'clock this morning, so be sure that you bundle up as you step out the door and keep the jacket closed because temperatures only reaching the middle 40s later on today. But a warm up is on the way. I have that full forecast coming up in just a little bit. Dakota?
All right, Cameron, thank you. Well, coming up here on Mountain News this morning, the war between Russia and Ukraine continues to escalate as explosions pound Ukraine's capital city. We'll have more on that when we come back.